The council chamber had never fallen so quiet. The docking bay beyond its glass. Walls glittered with the pride of the galaxy. Fleets of warships from every great empire, each vessel an emblem of power. Serrated Vakari dreadnoughts stretched like blades across the void. The crystalline cruisers of the Eleth shimmered, refracting starlight into prismatic fire. And the insectoid Keller had brought their hive carriers, living ships that pulsed with organic light, as though alive. Every empire had arrived in force. Every empire except one. At the far end of the bay floated a single ship. Compared to the titans that filled the chamber's viewports, Earth's Resolute looked almost humble. Its hull was plated in dull steel, without the flowing lines or jeweled spires of alien design. Its engines glowed faintly, steady but unimpressive. A lone human banner was etched across its side, an old symbol of Earth, recognizable only by the man who now walked into the chamber. The laughter started before Captain Elias Ward had even taken his seat. "Is this some kind of insult?" hissed the Vakari warlord, her mandibles clicking as she gestured toward the viewport. One ship. One pitiful ship. The chamber erupted in cruel amusement. Feathered delegates clacked their beaks in mockery. The Keller ambassador drummed, his claws against the table in rhythm, a chittering laugh. The laughter spread like wildfire, sharp-cutting, merciless. Ward stood silently. He had known this would happen. The humans had been invited to the Galactic Council as a novelty, an experiment to see if this backwater species could contribute to the eternal wars that defined the stars. And while other worlds flaunted their endless fleets, Earth had sent only the Resolute. "Perhaps," sneered the Elith's crystalline monarch, her voice like chimes of breaking glass, "your world could not build more than one." Ward's eyes flickered to the ship beyond the glass. He could see it in his mind's eye, the hull braced by unyielding alloys, the hidden thunder within its guns, the beating heart of its core. The galaxies saw weakness. They had no idea what they were looking at. "Numbers," Ward said quietly, his voice echoing in the chamber, "are not the only measure of strength." The words only earned more laughter. One Vakari slammed his armored fist onto the table. "You presume to stand here among fleets that have conquered empires, with only that relic behind you." His mandibles split wide in a grin. "What is Earth's strategy? To bore us into surrender?" The chamber howled. Yet Ward did not move. His stillness unsettled them more than defiance ever could. For while the council mocked, whispers began to spread in the shadows. A lone ship, why risk humiliation unless they knew something others did not? Why send a single vessel into the heart of the galaxy unless they were certain it could stand? The Keller's laughter faltered first. Their hive queen tilted her head, compound eyes narrowing as she studied Ward's face. "You speak with certainty, human," she said at last. "Why does your voice not tremble?" Ward finally turned, meeting her many eyes with the calm of a man who had seen storms break and stars burn. "Because," he said, "I did not come here to ask for a place in your council. I came here to remind you why Earth was given one." The chamber quieted. The laughter was gone. Ward stood alone, one man against empires, with only a single ship behind him. A ship the galaxy dismissed as ordinary. A ship that, soon, would tear their certainty apart. And though no one yet knew it, the galaxy's endless wars, its balance of power, its entire map of dominance would be redrawn because of the thunder that slept within the Resolute. The chamber doors sealed with a hiss, locking the human inside with the most powerful warlords of the galaxy. Captain Elias Ward walked forward slowly, his boots echoing on the obsidian floor. Above him, the vaulted ceiling shimmered with stars projected in real time from the systems outside the very fleets that had gathered to measure Earth's worth. Alien eyes followed him from every direction, filled with derision. A Vakari general leaned forward, her carapace glinting under the chamber lights. "One ship," she growled, mandibles clicking in cruel amusement. "Earth brings one ship to this council." Perhaps your kind does not understand what it means to stand among empires. The words hung heavy, and then the laughter began again. The Elith nobles sang their mockery, crystalline voices ringing like bells, cracking in a storm. The avian archon flared their wings, screeching in high-pitched chorus. Even the stoic Rylan lords rumbled with disdain, their granite-like forms shaking the floor as they mocked the fragile human. Ward's expression never changed. He took his seat at the lone human station, one chair, one flag, one symbol of Earth surrounded by rows of thrones and banners of species that spanned hundreds of worlds. The Keller ambassador tapped his claws against the table. Each strike, a sharp, echoing click. "Tell us, human," he hissed, his mandibles curling in a grotesque imitation of a smile. "Does Earth mean to conquer the stars with silence? Or is this your strategy, to bring us here and beg for mercy?" Ward looked up at him, his eyes calm, his tone steady. "Earth begs for nothing." The words cut through the chamber, silencing some of the laughter. For a moment, the only sound was the low hum of the council's energy field, and the faint whisper of the fleets outside the viewport. The Elith monarch leaned forward, her crystalline body refracting starlight like a living prism. "Then explain yourself, Captain," she said, her voice sharp as shattered glass. "The Vakari brought 73 warships. The Keller brought their hive carriers. Even the Archon brought fleets that blot out suns, and Earth brings Resolute." Her hand gestured disdainfully toward the viewport, where Earth's vessel floated still and unassuming. Ward followed her gesture, his gaze lingering on the ship. Its dull metal plating reflected nothing, its shape lacked grace, and its size was dwarfed by every vessel around it. But Ward's lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile. "One ship is all we require." The chamber erupted. "Arrogance," roared the Vakari general, her armored fist striking the table hard enough to crack the obsidian. "Delusion," screeched the Archon, feathers scattering as he flapped his wings. "Blasphemy," hissed the Elith queen, crystalline shards shedding from her form as her fury grew. But beneath the uproar, some remained silent. The Rylan lords exchanged uneasy glances. The Keller ambassador tilted his head, mandibles twitching in thought. The human's words carried a weight they could not dismiss. The Elith queen slammed her crystalline staff against the floor, sending a ripple of light through the chamber. "If Earth wishes to stand among us, then Earth must prove itself." At that, the Vakari general's mandibles spread in a grin. "Yes, a trial. Let us see if this Resolute can even fire its guns. Or will your lone ship crumble at the first breath of war?" Ward rose from his seat, meeting the gaze of every warlord in turn. His voice was quiet, but it carried like thunder through the hall. "Be careful what you ask for." The chamber fell into silence. Somewhere deep in the void, as though the stars themselves listened, Earth's lone ship drifted quietly waiting. The moon chosen for the trial was dead. Its surface stretched like a scar across the void, cratered, lifeless, a broken husk orbiting a red dwarf star. For centuries, it had drifted in silence. Now, it would become the stage where Earth's fate would be decided. Around it, fleets gathered like vultures, circling a carcass. Vakari warships glimmered with serrated hulls, their weapons already primed. Elith cruisers refracted light into blades of color, their energy cores glowing with impatient fury. The Keller hive carriers pulsed, alive with chittering soldiers who pressed against the organic glass of their ships, eager for violence. And in the center of it all, alone against the storm, floated Earth's Resolute. It did not move. Its engines burned with quiet restraint. Its guns lay dormant, almost invisible against the dull steel hull. From a distance, it looked like prey. The council's voices filled the Kumnet, projected across every channel for their fleets to hear. "Human," the Elith monarch sang, her voice ringing like shattering glass. "Here is your chance. Prove that your single ship deserves to stand in the shadow of empires." The Vakari general snarled, her voice sharp as claws raking metal. "We will fire first. If your vessel survives even one volley, perhaps it may be taken seriously. Perhaps. A ripple of cruel laughter echoed across the channels. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Elias Ward stood, with his hands clasped behind his back. His crew waited in silence, their faces set, their eyes locked on their instruments. Not one looked afraid. They had all known what they carried into this trial. "Captain," his first officer whispered, "their guns are locking onto us." Ward nodded slowly. "Let them fire." And so the stars lit up, beams of plasma, lances of crystal energy, torrents of kinetic fire, hundreds of weapons unleashed at once, their fury converging upon a single human vessel. Space burned with their brilliance. The moon below shook as explosions rippled across its battered crust. The void itself seemed to scream. For long seconds, Resolute disappeared inside the storm. The council chambers erupted with laughter once more. Delegates leaned forward, smug smiles on their faces. "So much for Earth," the Archon screeched, his feathers shimmering with pride. "So much for their arrogance." But the laughter died quickly. The storm cleared, and there it was untouched. Resolute floated silently in the void, its shields glowing faintly where the weapons had struck, but its hull unmarked. Not a single scratch. Gasps filled the chamber. The Vakari general's mandibles twitched in disbelief. The Elith monarch tilted her crystalline head, refracting light, as though searching for weakness. The Keller ambassador's claws froze mid-tap wards. Voice crackled calmly across the comnet. "Have you finished?" The silence that followed was heavier than any volley of weapons. The fleets that had come to mock now stared at the lone ship with something colder, something sharper, unease. Ward's hand hovered over the console before lowering. His crew watched him, waiting for the order. But Ward did not yet give it. He let the silence stretch, let the unease turn to fear, because he knew what came next. For a long moment, the galaxy held its breath. The trial had been meant to humiliate Earth, to expose the weakness of its lone vessel. Instead, the fleets of empires had unleashed their full fury only to watch Resolute drift calmly in the void, untouched. The silence was unbearable. In the council chamber, warlords shifted uneasily in their seats. Admirals whispered to their aides in hushed tones. Even the insectoid Keller stopped their rhythmic claw-tapping, as though fearing the sound might break something fragile. And terrible. Captain Elias Ward's voice finally broke the stillness. "You wanted proof," he said, his words calm as stone. "Now, you'll have it." On the Resolute's bridge, the crew came alive with motion. Fingers flew across consoles. Warning runes flickered. Deep within the ship's armored heart, mechanisms began to stir. The gun awoke. It wasn't like the alien weapons. No elegant beams of light. No prismatic explosions. No organic shrieks. It was a soundless, unseen thing. Coils of power winding. In silence, building with a pressure that made the void itself seem to tremble. Across the fleets, alien sensors screamed in alarm. Energy spikes spiked beyond measurable limits. Ships recalibrated their targeting arrays, struggling to understand the anomaly. "What is that?" hissed the Elith monarch, her crystalline form vibrating with unease. "Nothing registers." The Rylan admiral muttered, his granite-like face stiff with tension. The Vakari general leaned forward, eyes wide, mandibles clicking. "That is no weapon I have ever seen." Ward raised his hand. "Target locked," his weapons officer whispered. "Fire." The void tore open. A single round left the Resolute's gun. There was no flash of color, no fireworks to dazzle the watching fleets. Only a ripple like reality itself had been shoved aside, like space had flinched from the force that had just passed through it. The shot struck the dead moon. For an instant, there was silence. Then light erupted. The moon cracked a spider of fractures racing across its surface faster than sight could follow. The fractures glowed white-hot, magma spilling upward into the void, and then, with a soundless shudder, The entire moon came apart, millions of tons of rock splitting into incandescent shards that spiraled outward like flaming embers, scattered by a giant's hand. Gasps filled the council chamber. Admirals fell silent mid-sentence. Delegates who had sneered moments before now stared wide-eyed at the shattered remains of what had once been a celestial body. The Keller ambassador's mandibles twitched. "One shot," he whispered. "One shot," Ward confirmed. His voice carried across the comnet, steady and unshaken. "You asked if Earth belonged here. Now you have your answer." Silence. True silence. The kind that only comes when fear presses down so heavily that even laughter dares not rise. Across the fleets, alien crews stared at their displays in disbelief. The Vakari general, once mocking, now sat rigid in her seat, her claws digging furrows into the obsidian table. The Elith monarch's crystalline form flickered erratically, light scattering as though her body could no longer hold its perfect shape. Ward let the silence stretch. He wanted them to remember it, the void after the thunder, the stillness after power had been revealed. He wanted them to understand, because this was not the extent of Earth's strength. This was merely a glimpse. The shattered remains of the moon still burned in the void. Chunks of molten stone drifted in orbit, glowing red like embers caught in the breath of an invisible fire. Fleets that had once surrounded the test site kept their distance now, their formations scattered, their guns silent. The galaxy had witnessed Earth's answer, and it had shaken them all. But fear never lingers in silence. It whispers, it spreads. Inside the private halls of the council chamber, the laughter that had once mocked Earth was gone. The delegates sat in shadow, their faces lit only by the faint blue glow of holographic projections, replaying the destruction again and again. The Vakari general's claws scraped against the table, her mandibles trembling. That was not a weapon, it was an extinction. A single shot, and a moon is gone. The Illith monarch's crystalline body flickered with unstable light, shards fracturing from her form as her voice rang sharp as breaking glass. If they can shatter a moon, what stops them from shattering a world? The Archdelegate, feathers shivering with unease, leaned forward. Then the path is clear. We cannot allow such a weapon to exist. Humanity must be stopped before they decide to aim those guns at us. The chamber filled with murmurs, low and dangerous. Fear hardened into something sharper, suspicion. The Keller ambassador's claws clicked rapidly against the table. Or, perhaps, he hissed, we ally with them, bind them in treaties, draw them into our wars, so that their thunder becomes our thunder. The words drew immediate protest. Slavery by treaty. The Elith monarch snapped. Submission by alliance, the Vakari general growled. Or survival. The Keller whispered. Across the chamber, Captain Elias Ward said nothing. He stood, alone at the edge of the gathering, watching as the galaxy turned its debate inward. He had not been invited to this private session, but neither had he been removed. Perhaps they wanted him to hear. Perhaps they wanted to frighten him. Instead, he saw only the truth. They were afraid, terrified. Every word, every hiss, every glimmer of crystalline light and twitch of insectoid claws screamed the same thing. They had glimpsed Earth's strength, and now they were scrambling to decide whether to bow to it or destroy it. Ward spoke finally, his voice a low rumble cutting across their rising arguments. You speak as though Earth asked for war. We did not. We came here to stand as equals. Nothing more. Equals. The Vakari general barked. Her armored fist struck the table, cracking the obsidian. You brought a doomsday weapon and shattered a moon to prove your place. That is not equality, that is dominance. Ward's eyes hardened. We shattered a moon because you demanded proof. You asked if one ship could stand against fleets. Now you know. The choice of what you do with that knowledge is yours. But, understand this, his voice grew colder, sharper. We did not fire to threaten. But if you force our hand, we will fire to end. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the holograms flickering with replayed explosions seemed to dim under the weight of his words. The Illith monarch's crystalline head tilted, refracting the broken moonlight. "Then it begins," she whispered. "Some will seek your alliance, others will seek your destruction. But Earth has left us no middle path." Ward turned, his coat brushing the obsidian floor as he walked toward the chamber doors. He paused. Only once, his voice a final echo behind him. "Then, choose wisely." The doors closed, and in the darkness that followed, the whispers grew louder, hungrier. The council could not agree. Some demanded alliance, to bind Earth to their wars. Others demanded annihilation, to erase the threat before it grew too great. But amid the fear and indecision, one voice rose above the rest, defiant, arrogant, certain. The Zorith Dominion, their admiral, stepped forward, clad in armor woven from living star metal, his voice booming across the chamber. "This human trickery proves nothing. A dead moon is not a war. Their so-called weapon is an illusion, a display meant to frighten children. Against true power, their lone ship will crumble." The chamber stirred. Whispers spread like sparks, and then, without waiting for vote or sanction, the Zoreth admiral gave the order. From the Dominion's fleet came a dreadnought, Oblivion's Wrath. It was no ordinary warship. Twice the size of any Vakari blade ship, its hull bristled with weapons like the spines of some ancient predator. Its engines burned blue-white, warping space with their fury, and at its core, legends whispered, was a weapon that could unmake continents in a single strike. The dreadnought broke formation, gliding into the void toward Earth's lone vessel. Its shadow swallowed the stars. From the Council's observation decks, the galaxy leaned forward to watch. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Elias Ward stood as calm as ever, his crew silent but steady at their stations. Their sensors filled with warnings, target locks, energy spikes, incoming signatures of weapons that could scorch planets. His first officer spoke, voice tight. "Captain, their guns outnumber ours 50-1. If they open fire, they will," Ward interrupted. His eyes never left the looming dreadnought, and when they do, the galaxy will finally learn the truth. The Cumnet flared to life. The Zoroth admiral's face filled the display, ridged features twisted in contempt. "Human," he sneered, "surrender your vessel. Admit your fraud, or be destroyed before all who watch." Ward said nothing. His silence stretched, deliberate, until the sneer faltered. Then he gave his reply in a single, quiet word: "No." The Zoreth admiral's ridged face hardened. His voice became a roar, then burn. The dreadnought fired. A storm of plasma lances streaked across the void, each one bright enough to blind unshielded eyes. Cannons thundered with kinetic rounds that could punch holes through moons. Missiles howled, leaving burning trails in the black. The storm dwarfed even the trial volley against the moon. The Resolute stood its ground, shields flared, bending under the assault but refusing to break. The bridge shook with the force, consoles flickering, warning lights blazing red. Yet the hull held. The crew gritted their teeth but did not falter, and through it all, Ward stood steady. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Target locked. The weapons officer's hands trembled not from fear, but from the anticipation of what came next. "Target locked, Captain." Ward lifted his hand, calm as ever. "Fire." The gun spoke. This time, the void did not ripple. It cracked. The shot struck Oblivion's Wrath, dead center. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the dreadnought's hull rippled outward like water struck by a stone. Armor peeled back in glowing sheets. Weapons tore free and spun uselessly into space. The core ruptured, its energy spilling out in a wave that lit the void brighter than any sun. And then it was gone. The dreadnought that had been the pride of the Zoreth Dominion was nothing but debris, drifting embers cooling in silence. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some shouted for alliances, others for war. Some stared in stunned silence. The Zorath Admiral was gone, his pride, his empire's symbol of power, annihilated with one shot. On the Resolute, Ward lowered his hand. His voice was quiet, but every fleet in the galaxy heard it. Now you understand. The void still glowed with the embers of the Zorath dreadnought. Shards of molten armor drifted silently, glowing like dying suns. Vaporized hull fragments shimmered in the dark, scattering light like a shattered crown. What had once been the Oblivion's wrath, the Dominion's pride, a terror whispered across galaxies, was now nothing more than drifting ash. An Earth's lone ship floated untouched amid the wreckage. In the council chamber, chaos reigned. The Vakari general rose. From her seat, mandibles spread wide in disbelief. Impossible, she snarled, her voice cracking with something her people had not known for centuries: fear. No ship, no world, holds such fire. The Elith monarch's crystalline body flickered with unstable fractures, shards falling to the obsidian floor. Her voice rang sharp as breaking glass. They erased a dreadnought, in a heartbeat. If that power is turned against us, the Archon delegate screeched, feathers scattering across the chamber. There is no if. They will. We must strike now, all of us together, before Earth claims dominion over every star. But others shook their heads, too stunned to echo the call. The Rylan lords, whose stone-like bodies were carved from patience itself, spoke in a rumble that shook the walls. Strike. With what? We just watched the galaxy's strongest dreadnought unmade as though it were dust. The chamber fell into bitter argument. Voices clashed like weapons. Alliances crumbled. In real time, fear poisoned every word. Meanwhile, across the fleets orbiting the shattered moon, panic spread. Vakari squadrons, once locked in proud formation, broke rank, their captains unwilling to stay within range of the Resolute. Elith cruisers scattered into shards of color, retreating into the void. Even the hive carriers of the Keller pulsed uneasily, their brood soldiers clicking in restless panic within their living hulls. Entire armadas, assembled to mock and intimidate, now dissolved into chaos. Humanity had not fought a battle, they had ended it before it began. On the Resolute's bridge, Captain Elias Ward stood silent as his crew watched the retreat. The stars before them flickered with ships vanishing into faster-than-light corridors. Each departure a flash of panic. "Captain," his first officer whispered, awe in her voice, "they're running." Ward's gaze stayed fixed on the void. His voice was calm, but beneath it ran a current of steel. "They've seen enough to know what we carry, and that's enough to terrify them." He turned slowly, looking at his crew, every officer steady at their station, every face carrying the same understanding. They had not just destroyed a dreadnought, they had shattered the illusion of galactic supremacy. But Ward knew fear was never an end. Fear was a beginning, already. He could see the paths unfolding, empires whispering in back rooms, building secret coalitions, plotting assassination or sabotage. Others would come offering alliances laced with chains, seeking to bind Earth before it grew beyond control. And some would flee to the edges of the galaxy, whispering the name Resolute as though it were a curse or a prayer. The galaxy itself had shaken, and when the stars tremble, nothing remains the same. Ward clasped his hands behind his back, his voice steady as stone. "Prepare the transmission." The crew exchanged glances, then nodded. They understood. It was time for Earth to speak, not to the Council alone, but to every world, every empire, every listening ear across the stars, because the message was no longer about survival. It was about memory. The galaxy had forgotten what humanity was capable of, and Ward would remind them. The galaxy waited. From the shattered remains of a moon, from the drifting ashes of the Zorath dreadnought, every sensor and comlink across 1,000 ships now tuned toward a single frequency. The chaos of retreat, the arguments of warlords, the whispers of terrified empires all stilled, because Earth's lone ship was about to speak. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Elias Ward stood tall, hands clasped behind his back. Around him, the crew worked in silence, their faces set in grim determination. Before them, the galaxy's eyes waited for Earth to reveal its intent. The transmission went live. Ward's image appeared across the council chamber, across fleet flagships, across colonies orbiting distant suns. His voice carried into every ear, calm and steady, yet heavy with a weight no weapon could match. This is Captain Elias Ward of Earth's Resolute. You asked us to prove our worth. You mocked us for sending only one ship. You demanded we fire. We answered. Behind him, the viewport showed the wreckage of the shattered moon, glowing like embers in the dark. The site was not chosen by accident. We do not come here as conquerors. We do not come to demand your submission. We came to stand as equals, nothing more. But you, his voice sharpened. You forced our hand. You laughed. You doubted. You demanded blood. Ward's eyes burned cold as the void, and you saw what followed. Across the stars, silence reigned. Warlords who had shouted minutes before now leaned forward, rapt. Soldiers who had cheered for war now held their breath. Civilians on far-flung colonies felt the weight of his words. Even if they could not see the wreckage behind him, Ward did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His calm was more terrifying than any roar. Understand this. Earth does not seek war. But if you bring war to us, if you dare raise your fleets against humanity, you will find the stars themselves shaking beneath our guns. You will remember what it means to fear a single ship. The silence deepened. On the council floor, the Elith monarch's crystalline body trembled faintly, light fracturing across her form. The Vakari general's mandibles clicked in nervous agitation. Even the Keller ambassador, whose species had never known silence, did not move a claw. Ward leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering to something that cut deeper than steel. Do not mistake mercy for weakness. Do not mistake patience for submission. We are humanity. We needed no fleets to prove ourselves. We needed only Resolute. And you have seen what that means. For a heartbeat, the transmission held, his image framed by the burning wreckage of the moon. Then the signal cut. The void returned to silence, but it was not the silence of mockery, nor the silence of disbelief. It was the silence of a galaxy that had been reminded of something ancient and terrible, that the humans, who had come late to the stars, were not to be tested lightly. On the Resolute's bridge, Ward exhaled softly, the weight of the moment settling across his shoulders. His first officer whispered, almost reverently, "Do you think they'll listen, Captain?" Ward's gaze stayed fixed on the stars, steady and unflinching. They'll listen, because they no longer have a choice. And somewhere, far across the galaxy, empires began rewriting their maps. Not to mark borders, not to mark conquests, but to mark a single word, whispered with fear, respect, and awe, alike. Earth.